evening, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder. Uh, so you might be noticing that you're not seeing my beautiful face this week. Well, I figured that I'm currently house sitting on my laptop, and I figured nobody wanted to view the up the nose cam.
Yeah, yeah.
And speaking of which, I'm house sitting. There is a loud 19-year-old cat who may start wailing in the background. She is totally okay. She's just a drama queen who uses the loud, like, you know those meows that cats make when you're shoving them into a box to take to the vet?
Yes, yeah,
Daniel can verify she dropped a bunch of those in a row when she just wanted me to come over and stroke her under the chin.
yeah.
Like, she sounds like she's dying. She's fine.
No, she's just old and cranky.
Yes.
And
Um,
good to see you, Ninja.
and Ninja. So I only say this in advance because I may suddenly have to go to put her outside or something. Just
Yeah.
so we have a little bit of peace, but we'll see where this goes.
Yes, indeed. If you are returning, like Ninja, welcome back. If you're new, what we usually do is we'll do some reviews. We review something that's come out recently, and then something classic or older. We have some solo reviews that we're doing. I may be starting a little trend of mine where I'm going to be reviewing schlocky B movies.
And I seem to be continuing on my weeb train. So
Yes. Now ordinarily we do box office talk, but there's really nothing to report in the box
yeah,
office.
yeah. I mean, the new Aliens movie made a middling amount of money. Woohoo!
Yes. Yeah. It didn't make as much as Deadpool and Wolverine's third weekend. So that should
Right.
tell you something. But instead, we are going to talk about some recent news, which may affect our channel, given our uh, given a pledge that we have made recently. But
Yes. Now, for all of you who are listening, so somehow we have not yet rocketed from 99 to 1,000 subscribers. So we have been spared actually having to watch this.
yes, we have not had to watch the Acolyte yet. All 8 episodes of it, and there will only be 8 episodes because it's been canceled.
Yes. And there are a couple of interesting things about this just overall.
Mhm.
So first off, so part of the reason we're doing this in lieu of our usual box office talk is outside of just having numbers to talk about, part of the reason we like talking box office is that it's kind of our mirror into what people are actually plunking down their money for.
Yeah.
It's because it just gives you an idea of what's trendy, what's catching on, what isn't, and so on.
It's yes.
So I do find myself slightly in sympathy with the fans of this show who are upset that it got canceled. Um,
Mm.
because if I'm being honest, this show, from the moment it was announced, never had any sort of positive vibes from a huge chunk of the Star Wars fandom.
Yeah, because I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the showrunner was Leslie Headland,
Yep.
um, who I think she's worked in like theater, like stage theater, and
She's made some TV. Apparently, that TV was at least decent.
yeah, she's more well known for being the assistant to a certain Hollywood producer who's like one of the biggest scumbags who have ever lived. Uh,
Yeah, a man whose exposure kicked off Me Too and I would say that Harvey Weinstein.
yes,
Like,
yeah,
his exposure kicked off Me Too and arguably did more damage to Hollywood than a lot of other trends that have been happening recently.
yes, yeah, definitely
There's been a lot
changed
of
how, yeah,
overcompensation.
oh yeah, yeah, very much so. Uh, yeah, in particular with how certain female characters are portrayed.
Yes. Now, mind you, I'm also going to say again, in all fairness, the man deserved to go to prison for what he did.
Yes.
The man did wrong. I'm glad that he's no longer out there doing wrong by people.
Yes.
But if I'm looking at it from this like a metagaming perspective, uh, shows like this can almost be seen as people trying to overcompensate and apologize for past sins.
Yeah. And I remember watching a clip from Star Wars Theory where he was watching this episode and or one of the episodes, and he said, "Oh, this is just a therapy session for Leslie."
Yeah, it's funny how much modern material is like that because that's also Tom King's comic books too,
Yeah.
are
And
his personal
yeah,
therapy sessions.
yeah, Star Trek Discovery was a lot like that too. just like just therapy sessions for the writers and the actors. Like, okay,
So, um, but also just this thing was cursed on every level. So
yeah,
we have a controversial showrunner.
yeah,
It's being set. It's not even being set in the High Republic, is my understanding. Like it's adjacent to the High Republic, and it has a couple of characters from it.
yeah. I want to. It's what, like 100 years before Phantom Menace. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around in there.
Yeah.
And and but like you can't even benefit. I can't even say Star Wars High Republic presents the Acolyte. Like so, it's like why set it in this time period you're setting or you're setting up if you're not going to like try to tie it in.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. And you got the whole that now again we haven't watched the show, so like our knowledge of it is really based on like what other people have said about it.
Right.
Um and so like you have this whole dynamic with the space witches. And yeah, these aren't the witches of Dathomir. These are different space witches if I'm correct on that.
The other thing that kind of cursed this show is that man, if you ever wanted to like get a okay, so people have been saying for many years Kathleen Kennedy bad at running Star Wars, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But it's like the proof is kind of in the pudding, but it's also in just the sheer number of canceled projects. But you also have, I believe Leslie said at one point that in an interview that she turned in a good Star Wars story, and Kathleen said, "This is a great Star Wars story, but I want a great Leslie Headland story." So she rewrote it into this therapy session. So that means that we could have at least had a middling Star Wars show because, again, the working third hand, Leslie does seem to have some talent in writing.
Ouch.
It just is not
Wow,
visible at all here.
man. Yeah, that's man.
I
Come
also
on.
heard that like she was running Star Wars role playing groups for a while there,
Hmm.
and from what I've heard, you almost wonder if she act like maybe she can't write in this milieu because she's too used to not having it be structured properly.
Yeah. It, it, I think she's probably better suited to, I hate to say it, writing dramas.
Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily space dramas.
What's also kind of unusual about the announcement is how quickly they've announced it's canceled.
Yeah. The final episode dropped a month ago. Not quite as fast as when Netflix canceled Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah. Like well, that was like what, the week after?
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, I yeah, it's pretty amazing that they pulled the trigger on it that quickly because we haven't really they didn't do that with like Boba Fett or Obi-Wan or what's that?
So
Um,
we know a second season of Andor is happening.
yeah, and
We haven't yeah, we haven't gotten confirmation of
well, I know Mandalorian. They're just gonna do the movie. Um,
Right. Yeah, like what was going to be season 4 is getting turned into the movie.
yeah, and
We
yeah,
also we don't technically have confirmation that Ryan Johnson's trilogy isn't happening.
right. But yeah, but at this point, I think it's safe to assume that it is not happening.
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Yeah,
but Disney just kind of slammed the door on this thing,
yeah,
which is very interesting. So let's. So my sympathies with the fans of this is also that it is so easy in the internet era to get into a bubble where you assume that everybody has the same opinions that you do.
yeah,
I occasionally have my bubbles breached on a variety of opinions, and I have to think about them. Like, oh, here's my actual Star Wars example. When I was in junior high, the prequels came out,
hmm,
and all of my friends who were Star Wars adjacent just loved them. Like we quoted them, we played with the action figures. We just thought it was so neat. Like even
yeah,
though we'd have a couple little criticisms here and there, but overall loved the movies. It
yeah,
was not until I got to college that I realized that there were differing opinions about the Star Wars prequels.
yeah. Well, unfortunately, I didn't have that same experience because I liked the prequel movies when they came out, like you, and but my older brother, who was in college at the time, thought they were awful.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, okay,
Right, but
yeah,
it's very easy to get into an online echo chamber.
yeah,
I'm also reminded of I can't remember who said it, but there was a reporter who, upon hearing about Richard Nixon's amazing 1962 presidential landslide, said, "I don't know how he won. I don't know anybody who voted for him."
yeah, yeah,
That's your other bubbles I'm in. I know maybe one person who might have seen Avatar too.
I don't know any. Yeah, same here. Yeah, like I don't know anybody who saw Avatar too.
And the only reason I say might is because in advance of it, he talked about how much he liked Avatar 1 and was looking forward to it. But then
Mm,
he took a sabbatical from work and it hasn't come up in conversation since.
uh,
But so what's interesting about this one is that the ratings sucked. I'm sorry, this thing cost as much. This thing cost more to make than the last Godzilla and Kong movie.
hmm. Yeah, it costs about as much as a modern Disney movie costs, about 200, $300 million.
Yeah, the actual budget was like 180 million,
Yeah,
but it had worse rating than Ahsoka, than Andor. It's the new bottom
yeah,
of the franchise.
and Ahsoka was awful.
Oh, that's right. You forced yourself to watch that, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah,
I'm so sorry, man.
yeah,
Well, thankfully we set the bounty pretty high, although there are some possible indications that this thing is about to get the tax write-off treatment.
yeah. I have a little funny story about that. The other night, it might have been Tuesday night, as I was rolling around in bed trying to go to sleep, and this was, I think, right after the news had dropped that the show had been canceled. I kind of went, wait a second. What if this show is like Willow and they just take it off of the platform? I'm
Yeah,
like, what's that gonna do for us?
well, it means that we're relieved of our duty. That's what, or it
Oh
means we
yeah.
have to resort to piracy.
Yes.
Uh, and the other kind of, so that might be why they just slammed the door on it. Hey, this is canceled. And also, there had been actually okay. So I talked about being in information bubbles. So people looked on the Disney store for the Acolyte, and there were no results for the merchandise.
Yeah. Uh,
Which, however, it occurs to me that I cannot say in advance that there was actually merchandise available on the Disney store. I think there
mm.
probably was because I've heard people refer to it, but can't independently verify.
Yeah, there may have been like apparel and maybe some figurines. Yeah.
Okay, also kind of disproving that slightly, I just did an experimental search here
Yeah.
at the disneystore.com. And let me just go ahead and pull this up. I was in fact able to find some T-shirts for the Acolyte. So
Okay.
this particular talking point might have been people gaming the searches, or it could be that like they were in a different section than I was looking at.
Yeah. Those aren't even very good T-shirts either.
No, they really aren't.
Uh, yes, and yes, Disney charges $30 for the T-shirts, but if you buy two of them, you can get them for $25 a piece.
By Grabthar's hammer, what a savings!
Yeah, and you get an even more of a discount if you're an annual pass holder.
Ooh.
Yeah, but anyway,
But yeah, so there's a possibility that this just gets yanked, and that
yeah,
would make sense from a financial perspective because they're not going to be trying to sell DVDs and Blu-rays of this.
no,
They're, they're the T-shirts still exist, but I doubt they've sold very many of them.
yeah,
Nobody's watching this. Like I think Andor um, gets saved from this treatment because it was well received by those who watched it, and I'm sure that over time, the people who loved it have convinced others to give it a shot.
yeah. I may even give that show a shot at some point, even though I know what happens to the guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's on my to-do list.
Yeah,
Uh, I mean, and part of the reason it still works, even though you know that Andor dies at the end of Rogue One, is that, from my understanding, it almost operates more as a Origins of the Rebellion movie.
yeah,
Like, yeah, but speaking of, this goes nowhere. It doesn't even tie into the High Republic necessarily.
yeah.
It's poor. From all indications, it was poorly written, didn't look good, had special effects, made people laugh with things like fires in space.
Yeah,
It looked like they were blowing in the space wind.
yeah. Yeah, and some of the fight scenes that I saw were questionable.
Yeah, but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if this manages to stay on the platform, or if they decide it's worth more as a tax write-off.
Yeah,
Because they sunk a lot of treasure and effort into this. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this one, just from a behind-the-scenes perspective, it was, I forget if it was Chapek or which Bob was in charge at the time, but they
yeah.
basically declared, "Hey, we're not accepting new pitches for Star Wars right now. We're just focusing on what we have." And it's like Kathleen
Uh,
Kennedy like got a wild hair and decided to take a sudden pitch from Leslie and greenlight it right away, as if to go, "I'm in charge of Star Wars."
yeah, that sounds like something Chapek would have done.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just kind of
Yeah,
unfortunate all around.
yeah,
I can't say that this idea ever had a whole lot of potential, in my opinion. But then again, ideas are easy. It's execution that matters.
yeah. Hey, the fall of the 11th. The power of one season only, power of no season two, power of many salty Acolyte fans. Yeah, they
Yeah.
are very salty right now. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeesh.
Uh, but so I think speaking of executions, and that actually works as a decent transition to our first proper review of the week,
Yes.
Glenn Powell's Hitman, which, Daniel, I thought we were past this era of video game remakes where they don't honor the actual source material. He doesn't work for an international organization. He has hair. He doesn't even have a barcode on the back of his head.
I know. I know. Just, yeah. It just, man. It.
I, I hate it when they're just ashamed of the source material.
I know. Me too. Yeah. We're joking, by the way. This movie has nothing to do with the Hitman video
Yeah,
games.
we have to specify because I mentioned this in our chat, and Daniel actually thought I was serious.
Yeah. Yeah. Oops.
All right, so Hitman What's interesting about Hitman is it gets listed as either a 2023 or 2024 movie, depending.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was released in Venice in 2023, which I guess would be like that one film festival I can't think of the name
Or
of.
yeah, I think it's just Venice Film Festival. That's
Yeah.
what. Yeah.
Then it actually dropped in May of this year.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like it had a limited theatrical performance, probably enough for Netflix to try to you know be Oscar eligible.
Yeah. Although I can't see this movie getting any Oscar nods,
No,
if I'm being honest. um,
then actually dropped on Netflix in June.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so Hitman, yeah, it's, as DB mentioned, stars Glenn Powell, who was recently, most people probably saw him in Twisters. He was also in Anyone But You with Sydney Sweeney, and before all of that, he was Hangman in Top Gun Maverick. Um, and the movie was directed by Richard Linklater, who is somebody I'm familiar with, given that I'm originally from Austin, Texas. He's a bit of a a well-known commodity there, well-known filmmaker, because a lot of his movies were filmed in Austin. The his most famous one being Dazed and Confused. Um, and but his most of his movies are slice of life, like Dazed and Confused, and these sunrise sunset movies, with Ethan Hawke, and I can't remember the actress's name, where they play the couple, and they go around, and they're just doing couple stuff. Um, Although he also directed School of Rock with Jack Black. Uh, but I mean, but this movie is very much a Linklater movie.
Yeah, it also has a very small budget, apparently 8.8 million, which, boy, that shows on the screen.
It does, yeah. And they filmed it. It takes place in New Orleans, and it looks like they filmed all of it in New Orleans, because it looks like New Orleans.
It occurs to me that New Orleans is probably a relatively cheap place to film, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Um,
And this one is like a very loosely based on a true story.
yeah. Yeah. So Glenn Powell plays a guy named Gary Johnson, and the guy in real life, his name was also Gary Johnson, and he's uh, a professor at the University of New Orleans. He teaches philosophy and psychology. He's very nondescript, very kind of you know.
Okay. Let's be honest here. As nondescript as somebody who looks like Glenn Powell can be.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. 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 He wears he wears very plain looking clothing, including jorts, which I have not seen anybody wearing jorts in a man wearing jorts in like 20 years. um, yeah, and he has two cats named Id and Ego.
Which, man, this movie has such like a super basic understanding of psychology and philosophy that it's just kind of felt insulting. Like that's sort of like, oh, good for you. You read the Wikipedia on Freud when you were writing this.
Yeah, yeah. You're
Uh,
you're
also, I
you're
was wondering-
borrowing as much as you can from Intro to Psych in college.
um, so
Yeah,
I'm going to come in right out and just say it. Like I kind of have hostile feelings towards this movie, and I hope over the course of this review to show why.
yeah. So yeah, but in addition to being a professor, Gary is works part time with the New Orleans Police Department, basically doing like tech stuff, like like wiretapping and camera stuff and everything. But then one day when they're about to do so the whole thing that they do is he works with a team where like he's got like there's a cop and like two other cops with him, and they have another cop that poses as a hitman, uh, to basically entrap people into, you know, hiring this hitman to, take out somebody that they want to, take care of.
Right.
You know,
Which they would go to a point of saying there is no such thing as just like a retail level hitman. Like you
yeah.
know, they don't say this part. This is my editorial, but if you're a crime lord, you probably have somebody you can go to for this type of thing.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
they are
but
not, like, available to the general public.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and of course, there's the seedy part of the internet, the dark web, and people think, oh, you could go to the dark web and hire a hitman. Like the number of hitmen who have been hired from the dark web to kill somebody is zero.
Yes. If you see somebody, they are an FBI agent pretending
Yeah.
to be a hitman.
Yes. Yeah, and that, yeah, but that's the crux of it all, is that these people think they're taught, then this happens in real life. I mean, there was actually a case, actually right here in Florida. I want to say it was out in West Palm Beach, where a woman tried to hire a hitman to kill her husband, and the hitman was an undercover cop. Um, but um, but yeah, so they have this whole thing where they set up this little sting operation, and but then the cop who's usually posing as the hitman gets suspended because he's a jerk cop, basically.
Police brutality incident, and
Yeah.
this character is just like such a. This movie feels like it was written in 2020, which
Yeah.
it may very well have been.
Yeah.
Just because it's like
A lot of 2020 stuff going on. Yeah, like
it's very all cops are bastards, and
yeah, cancel. They're talking about cancel culture, and yeah.
yeah,
Um, so they need somebody to pose as the hitman to get the bust. So the only person they think of is Gary, and Gary's just like, "What do you mean? I've never done anything like this. I don't know what to do." And
right. But of course, since he's a psychologist, he he can kind of read people, I guess, and he can figure out what they want him to be.
yeah, and so he goes in, and then he's able to do it. He's able to get the guy to agree to the contract or whatever, and then the guy gets arrested, and then so begins Gary's odyssey of being the quote unquote hitman that is part of entrapping people into contract killings.
Yep. And I honestly, this sort of montage they have at the start with Glenn putting on different outfits, doing silly accents, pretending to be like varying types of hitmen. That's
Yeah,
probably the best part of the movie, even though it's a little bit directionless.
yeah. And hey, Creators Outlet, good to see you, man.
Hey,
Yeah, and one real quick, I also noticed too, Richard Linklater and Glenn Powell were credited as the writers, and I think Glenn Powell's contribution to the script was creating all of those personas for
very
the
likely.
different hitman.
I'll say Glenn Powell, great actor. I mean,
Hmm.
I keep remembering him from Top Gun Maverick, but realistically, he didn't actually have a very big role in that movie.
No, he didn't. He was mainly there just to be antagonistic to Brewster. Yeah,
Right, and he wasn't even that very often. Like
yeah.
he felt like he was the new Iceman, but he really wasn't.
No, he was. Yeah, he was very much. Much more of like a not even a secondary character, like tertiary.
But Glenn has enough charisma and effect that I remember that him 2 years later from when I watched it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you get some good scenes of that, and then we introduce the love interest, played by
Oh yeah, I saw that Creators Outlet. Yeah, Miss Marvel it's been removed from. Yeah, heard about that.
oh, has
Uh,
she? Okay.
yeah, moved from Daredevil Born Again. But that show's a mess.
Maybe,
But yeah, yeah. What was her name? Starts with an A.
um,
I mean,
Adria Ariona.
yeah. I don't know if you recognized her or not.
I did not know.
She was the love interest from Morbius.
Oh God, what man? She is. Oh man.
Yeah.
You know what? I can't even say that Morbius was her fault in any way.
No, it wasn't. It was just we all know whose fault that movie was.
Yes, but so she shows up for one of these stings, and she's trying to have a allegedly abusive husband offed, and he is immediately struck by her and decides to talk her out of it.
Yeah.
Um, which of course is seen as slightly suspicious by his police people who don't really function as characters. So their temporary suspicion is not a real impediment to him.
Right. And so then I'm trying to remember what happens after that. I guess she
There
reaches
is a
out to.
big chunk of the movie that's nothing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it really there's yeah, I mean it's nothing really I mean nothing really interesting happens in this movie until about an hour into it.
yeah, like the movie picks up a little bit at the hour mark because, so as you know, the early parts of the movie are you introduce him, you have a montage of scenes of him dealing with various people who want cleaning duties from him.
Mhm.
Meets this girl, and and then I forget who initiates it, but they start interacting, and like she thinks that the whole idea of him being a hitman is like weirdly sexy, I guess.
Yeah, which doesn't surprise me given her taste in men.
Considering that she was. Now, what's interesting is that I kind of got the impression that like, the husband is implied to be abusive, but I don't really think there's any signs of it. Like aside from him being kind of belligerent when he runs into her dating Glenn. So,
Yeah. Well, he could have been he could be like emotionally abusive.
right, right. Like, he does seem like he's very unstable,
Yeah.
eh, as seen by the fact that, well, in one scene, he ends up part of the sting operation before he recognizes Glenn and freaks out.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and but I kind of just felt like they were like morally equivalent because they, again, like I, this movie was already kind of too long, but I almost felt like we needed like a scene. Actually, maybe okay. So maybe the part of the movie's problem is that are there any scenes where Glenn isn't around really? Because it almost feels like it's written from like a first person perspective almost. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. I mean, you do have one scene where the two cops are talking to each other and he's still listening to their conversation and you see them in their office, but other than that, yeah, I can't think of really any scenes where he wasn't there.
Right, and even then, if he's listening in, Glenn is perceiving it. So that's kind of interesting, actually. May- Maybe that's part of the problem is that you can't have a scene where you have the husband and the wife having it out when she comes home from their date or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, okay, so we're gonna go full spoiler at this point, but the movie has been out long enough, like for a relatively limited period of time. So we're gonna give a quick, you know, non-spoiler summation. Like, what
Yeah.
do we think of this movie?
um I didn't really care for it very much. Like you said, it is. I thought it was too long. I mean, which I know is weird because this movie's just under 2 hours. But I mean, much like another movie I reviewed not too long ago with Bone Tomahawk, you could have cut 20-30 minutes out of this, and it wouldn't have really affected the story at all.
Yeah, like as much as I like all those montages of him doing the different roles, you probably could have cut a couple of them out.
Yeah. Well, the only one I really liked was when he was doing Patrick Bateman.
Um,
Yeah, but yeah, I I mean, like I said, Richard Linklater. This isn't really like. I mean, it feels like a Richard Linklater movie, but at the same time, it doesn't. Because his bread and butter really is slice of life. It's really just people being people, not really having a something like this. Just really doesn't fit with him very well. And I kind of felt the same way about School of Rock. It was a lot of the same way because it just, yeah, yeah, I didn't care for this movie.
yeah, I'm much the same way. I wish it was good. I
Mhm.
wish that I liked it because I like Glenn, um, and I feel like Arita could do a good job with a better script because she like they did have chemistry,
Yeah,
but yeah, just not a recommend. All right,
no,
so
no.
let's get into the spoilers where this movie goes from kind of dull and it was having a hard time holding my attention to me just being kind of enraged at how morally bankrupt this thing became.
Yeah,
Because okay, so Arita was already kind of questionable because she was happy to date an alleged hitman. Now, where it could be interesting is that, or where I could see it is that she did talk him out of using the services, or excuse me, he did talk her out of using the services. So that, like, if I'm her, that does kind of imply a hidden softness and affection for her. But still, like, the man, as far as you know, kills other people for a living.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so basically, what happens is they get word that the husband was found dead. Had been shot, and they suspect it was like a drug deal gone wrong. Um, and then Glenn goes to see Adriana, and then she confesses to him that yeah, she killed him, and then that's when he just loses his mind, and then he confesses to her that he's not really a hitman, and
Right, when she's like, "Wait, why are you so upset about this?"
yeah,
And then they get menaced by the evil cop from before, who has had a subplot where he's just jealous of all the attention that Glenn is getting for being such a great chameleon.
yeah, yeah, and oh, we forgot to mention too that he actually saw the two of them at a
Oh, right,
like
yeah,
a
right. He knew they were dating.
yeah, yeah, and he's yeah, so he's just really kind of weaseling his way, or slithering his way into screwing things up for Glenn, and then uh and full well that like he knows what is kind of really going on, and just really screwing with Glenn the whole time, and then so they do this whole thing where they start recording, or they wire up Glenn to try to get her to admit to doing it, and then he's typing the messages on the phone saying, "Hey, they're listening in, play along,"
Say you don't know this, say you don't know that.
Yeah,
But of course, the evil cop shows up and he's threatening them. The, I believe he was trying to like, was he planning to kill them? Like, for like for her insurance money, or was it like was he trying to bribe them or get them to bribe him into silence?
he was trying to get them to bribe him into silence. Yeah, he
That's
wanted he wanted a percentage of it. I think he wanted like half of it or something. I can't
right.
remember. Yeah,
And so now, okay, so fair enough. At that point, she drugs him and he passes out,
yeah,
and then Glenn passes the moral event horizon, as they call it on TV tropes, and proceeds to smother him with a plastic bag.
yeah. And the guy slowly suffocates to death.
right. And I kept expecting some sort of twist because that's kind of a horrifying, cold way to off somebody, but no.
Yeah. Yeah, and they kind of come up with the whole scheme of like, well, he was a dirty cop. He was, he
Right.
was a racist. He was a misogynist. Nobody's gonna
Nobody's
miss
gonna
him.
miss him. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll just dump his body in his car, and nobody will ask too many questions. And that's
yeah,
right. And they get a happy ending with kids, and everything's good because they killed two people who were in their way.
yeah,
What a wonderful moral for the children,
yes, yeah,
or for the adults for that matter.
yeah,
Like so that turned the movie from being just like low key, this is a TV movie, throw it on in the background while you're sorting laundry type thing,
yeah,
to just being outright despicable in my eyes.
yeah,
Because here's the thing: she and the husband were in a situation where, like, it was clearly mutually abusive at that point.
mhm,
Or at the very least, she tried to hire the hitman first.
yeah,
So
yeah.
generally not good for him
No,
or for
no,
her, I should say. But like at that point, Glenn ultimately ended up thinking with his lower half,
yes,
and like they had this speech at the end of the movie about how oh, you grow, and basically just it's like implying that, like, the whole time they've been kind of implying that oh, there's no such thing as reality, we are shaped by our experience, yada yada yada. Sounds like the actions of a guilty man who knows he's done wrong and is trying to define his way out of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's trying to gaslight his way out of it. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I I'd been recommended this movie. So apparently, I talked with some family members who'd seen it, and they had the same reaction I did. So that's
well, that's comforting. Yeah,
yes, yeah. So cannot recommend. Just kind of mildly infuriating.
yes, yeah, indeed.
So we each had our own individual reviews. Um, and we actually ended up with an accidental theme. We didn't really talk about what order, but I'll go ahead and go first because I just happened to have it queued up next.
All right.
World's most adorable superhero accused of mass murder. So,
What?
so I watched My Hero Academia World Heroes Mission, the third movie in the series.
Ah,
This came out back in 2021, and I'd actually kind of wondered if they were just not making movies from this anymore. But then I found out that the fourth movie dropped in Japan at the start of the month, so
oh,
it'll
okay.
be arriving shortly enough.
All right.
So there's a couple different flavors of anime movie out there. There's like they do the whole season recap in an hour, and it doesn't make any sense because they had to cut out so much material, but you're just there for an improved version of the fight scenes, basically.
Yeah.
And then there's the standalone independent story, um, which we've done a few of those before too. So the previous My Hero Academia movie that we reviewed, which was the first one, kind of fits that category of pseudo canon. Although
Okay.
apparently that the events of that movie are seen as canon to the series, at least the characters are.
Ah. Yeah.
This one, I would be exceptionally surprised if they ever referred to this again, just because it takes place in a fictional European country, and it is very self-contained,
Ah. Okay.
which is actually almost to its detriment.
Mm.
Like I feel dirty saying this, but this would be better as a filler season in the anime
Oh. Hmm.
because they introduce a lot of elements here. Uh,
Mm.
so the opening scene, you are introduced to a extremist organization called Humorize, which is like a very Japanese sounding pun, which just means humanity arise. Uh, an element they have actually discussed some in My Hero Academia at various points is that it's a world where 80% of the population has some sort of superpower or quirk. And as people intermarry and breed, they like the children seem to inherit both quirks or they mutate.
Yeah.
And over time, the quirks, the children's quirks are getting stronger than the adults' quirks, which is sidebar. That's actually an interesting way of explaining why you have so many teen heroes who can hang with the experienced adults in this
Yeah.
universe. Now that I think about it, uh, but according to this group Humorize, who believes in this thing called the Quark Doomsday Theory, that this will eventually result in the destruction of humankind and the world itself.
Uh,
So they're actually human supremacists.
uh,
And this movie is weirdly graphic and disturbing in some ways because the opening scene is them doing a terrorist attack with a gas that causes quirks to go out of control. It kills a lot of people.
ooh, wow. And yeah, Ninja says, yeah, I looked away for a second and thought you gave the title to an anime. Not quite.
Yeah. Now, this takes place. I'm not sure which season of the anime this actually takes place in.
Yeah.
It is actually around where I fell off the series, and I still haven't gotten back yet because my friend group that was watching it together started hanging out less often.
Yeah.
The pandemic ended, so
No.
I
Yeah.
had time to go out and do things.
Yeah.
Um, but it's set place where everybody's doing their work study with different groups, and they've all been assigned to the titular World Heroes mission, where each group of kids at the school has been assigned to a set of different pro heroes who have gone to different places to learn and do some missions. Uh, Deku, Bakugo, and Icy Hot have ended up in Todoroki. That's right, have ended up in a fictional European country whose name I forgot as soon as the movie ended. It is it is kind of France and Italy-ish, but of course everybody speaks Japanese because it makes life simpler. Simpler.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we are introduced to what is arguably the movie's real main character, a young man named Rhodey. Rhodey has a very bad case of main character syndrome, which means something different than it usually means here. But by this I mean that it feels like he thinks he's the main character of Deku's story.
uh,
And he has a lot of elements that are designed to quickly make you like him. But for me, for whatever reason, I was just immediately bored and turned off. I actually had to try to watch this movie twice
oh, jeez.
because he has a little brother and sister who he takes care of, and he has a cute little bird who follows him around and makes little noises all the time, and it's very cute and marketable.
Oh, yes.
And he's a thief who is stealing things to take care of his family, and he gets involved with this job where he's trying to steal some sort of jewels or something.
Yes. All
You can tell that the fine details of this part of the plot have really stuck with me.
right. Yeah.
But in the course of things, as he's trying to steal this, a, a scientist who had been working with Humorize has stolen a bunch of documents that were important to them and is being chased down by Humorize. And in the course of events, as Deku is trying to track down this, I should say, the three teen heroes who are with the adults in this European town, see a robbery occurring. They swoop in. Rhodey, the seeming main character of the movie, is involved with it, and by dumb coincidence, in the course of the theft, they end up with the Humorize material, while the Humorize ends up with the jewels they were trying to steal originally. or that Rhodey was trying to steal. And for some reason, I forget why, Deku gets blamed for the massacre that happens when Humorize launches this attack. Hence the screenshot here.
the Fox News blurb.
Yes, the Fox News blurb. And what's really hilarious to me is that in some of these newscasts, it feels like they were trying. Like, we know the media it plays favorites, but they refer to Humorize at one point as a. Let's see, I wrote down this wording because it was so hilariously, PC. Let's see here.
Was it like
ideological organization?
Ideological organization.
as far as ways of avoiding saying terrorists, that might be the most generic one I've ever heard.
That's good. I may have to use that one.
Yeah. Like, what are you afraid that the lawyers for the genocidal cult are going to come after you?
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez.
But so at this point, Deku and Rhodey end up kind of in a short road trip comedy with each other, which is, like, in my opinion, the very much least interesting part of the movie. Because Rhodey is just kind of, in my opinion, smarmy and unlikable. His character design kind of looks like it's the creator of the series throwing something together in 5 minutes because they told him that they were making a movie.
Yeah.
It's like, it looks like it's made up of a lot of tropes that he uses for his visual design.
Yeah.
And you find out that, oh, the little bird who follows him around, and I did keep wondering what the heck the bird was, because like, it didn't make an awful lot of sense, because this isn't a world with Pokemon. The bird is the bird is his quirk, and it shows his real emotions. So the bird is always trying to be nice and scolds him when he's doing bad things, and the bird is his conscience, and
yeah. Jeez.
So where the movie finally picks up again is when Bakugo and Todoroki show up and save them when they're in the middle of being ambushed by a Humorize group. And it turns out that Humorize is going to blow up 25 of these bombs in 2 hours, and they have to stop them. But all the heroes are trying to stop the bombs themselves. But our 3 teens and Rhodey have figured out where the main base is, so they can stop the bomb there.
Yeah.
and you get some, like, admittedly really cool fight scenes. Now you would wonder how the heck you get really cool fight scenes when you have an anti-quirk extremist group. Like, how are they going to face up to our superheroes? It turns out they're enormous hypocrites and are actually led by a guy with a quirk. And there are multiple quirk users who follow them, but who I guess believe in the quirk doomsday theory.
Yeah. Of course, you can't expect people like that to actually be logically consistent with their ideals.
Yeah. And you get some very cool looking fight scenes, but and Rhodey does kind of redeem himself, but by that point I was just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And of course, as we know, this is the end of the series. They blow up the bombs. Everybody with a quirk is wiped out, and the series just proceeds on without them for that point. It's weird that they did that in the movie instead of ending in the manga that way, but it's.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm being heavily sarcastic here. They save the day, and there's a tearful goodbye with Rhodey, and it turned out Rhodey was the boy who had the secret to everything, because his father had been forced to help the baddies work on their bombs, and blah 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 blah.
Yes.
So I would say this is like a fairly middling movie as far as, like, the whole one-shot shonen thing goes. But, like, if you compare it to, like, say, the Dragon Ball TV movies, those were like an hour-ish. This clocks in at about, I want to say, an hour 45. Let's see here.
That does seem kind of long for an anime movie. Because
I think it's because it was just kind of overstuffed. Like they were trying to introduce too many elements to make you care about them, which is kind of why they had to kind of fast forward Rhodey's character development as the plucky rogue. I think part of it is also that he just came off as very smarmy because he was dealing with Deku, who's just like a very straightforward, kindly character.
yeah.
Um, it's like him smarming on Deku just like made me feel oddly protective. Like, you leave that poor boy alone.
Yeah, he's he's the heir apparent to All Might. Come on.
Yes, he's just a nice kid. What, you think you're so great?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I can't claim that this movie is awful or anything. I've definitely seen worse, but it definitely doesn't measure up to the other two movies in the
Mm.
series.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. But I almost have a feeling that I watched the better of the two superhero movies we're going to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yes, my journey into schlocky B movies continues. Um, so I watched Roger Corman's Black Scorpion, which was a very low budget. It was, of course, it's Roger Corman, so yes, it's going to be low budget, but a low budget superhero movie. Very much trying to be in the vein of the Tim Burton Batman movies. Although I would say certainly like goofier than.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen this movie, but I have seen a few episodes of the TV series that this spawned, and
Yeah.
they had Adam West as a supporting character in this show, so that tells you what they were going for.
Yeah. But yeah, so Black Scorpion she's basically like take Batman and Catwoman and combine the two of them, and that's basically who she is. Um, so so the movie basically is about uh, Black Scorpion. Her real name is Darcy Walker, and she's a cop in Angel City, which is really Los Angeles. Um, and she's kind of got a she's trying not to be like her father. Her father was also a cop, and her dad lost his badge, or lost his badge because he accidentally shot a doctor in the hospital during a hostage situation,
Mm.
which that comes up later in the movie. And So she's trying not to be as like roguish as him, but we uh, we meet her where she's working as a undercover as a lady of the streets,
Knew
if
it.
you know what I mean.
Knew that's where it was going.
Yeah. And she's hanging around with this an actual lady of the streets, because her pimp, or I should say the guy who collects the money, um, is well, suspected of killing a few other ladies of the streets and their male clients. Um, and So she's doing that, and then of course her partner is nearby, a very straight laced uh, detective. God, what was his name? Michael Russo, played by Bruce Abbott, who most people remember him from Reanimator. And yeah, and Black Scorpion Darcy is she's played by Joan Severance, who DB and I saw in a movie about a month ago. She was in Bird on a Wire. She was she's the the vet character who's like another girlfriend of Mel Gibson's character, and she like turns out to be like a total badass. um, And so, but yeah, so anyway, they uh so anyway, as the story progresses, like they arrest the pimp, but they can't hold him because they couldn't really, they didn't have any evidence that they could really charge him with. And you find the real goofy part of the movie with their captain, who's this he's a chain smoker, and he's he's in the in there in their office, and he's smoking a cigarette, and the DA is using his asthma inhaler, and the captain is just like, you need to take better care of yourself.
So it sounds like the movie's got some like nice ironic lines there.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, yeah. There's another part in there where the captain's like, he's got a cigarette, and he's like, and one of the cops is like, "Hey, you okay there, Captain?" "Oh, I quit smoking this morning. It's just really getting into me." um, but yeah. So the other aspect too is with Darcy's partner, Michael, is that he's very he's overly protective of her, which gets on her nerves. And then she's out having a beer with her dad, who's working as a stadium security guard. And what's weird is that they had the same actor who played her dad when she was a kid, playing him, as her dad as an adult. And you look at the two of them, it's like, okay, they're like the same. you don't, you can't really tell that they're father and daughter. Um, but then what ends up happening is the DA walks into the bar and then shoots her dad, and shoots and kills her dad. And they, of course, they're trying to figure out, like, well, why would he do that? And then she goes into the prison cell where the DA is, and threatens him with a gun, trying to get him to tell her why he killed her dad and why he killed her dad. And then she loses her job, and then that's when she decides, well, I've got all these clothes from when I was working undercover. And
So that's why her superhero costume looks like a stripper outfit.
exactly, yeah.
That's kind of hilarious, actually.
Yeah. um, but she takes on the persona of this of a scorpion, because when she was a girl, her dad told her the story of the scorpion and the frog. Um, which I'm hopeful that people in our audience know that story. If you don't, just Google it. Um, and
Heck, I even made reference to it in one of my books.
yeah, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Um, and so she dons all her she dons her costume, and then she goes and kills the pimp. And then she decides that this is the way she wants to go about it. So then uh, it kind of actually, a part of it reminded me of Death Wish, when she's going around being a vigilante, and then she actually watches news stories about her, much like the way Paul Kersey did in Death Wish. And but then she then so there are a lot of kind of like glaring, like, leaps in logic that you kind of have to roll with it, given the fact that what this movie is. Like for example, like, her dad gave her a scorpion ring, and she takes apart a taser, and, like, hooks it up to with the ring, and then it shoots electricity out of it.
Huh.
Yeah, and she also, and I guess at some point she did the same thing with her. She put like electrical stuff into her boots, and it makes her jump really high. And the probably the one of the most glaring goofs is that her boots change from heels to flats depending on depending on if she's fighting or not. Um, but the main crux of the movie is that there's a super villain called the Breath Taker. And that's the guy over her right shoulder there, and with the red eyes, um, wearing just the like a cheapo like Darth Vader costume. And he has an army of asthmatics. And his grand plan is so like the one of the things they've mentioned is that the city has a really bad smog problem, which, if you know anything about LA has a
That
smog
fits. Yeah.
problem. Yeah. Yeah, and so they built all these towers to air control quality towers. And so the breathtaker takes over one of these. His grand plan is to take over these towers and release this mind control gas. And the mind control gas was what was in the DA's inhaler. And that's why because so spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled by this for hearing these spoilers, the breathtaker is the doctor that Darcy's father shot. And
Okay.
okay, so what's funny is when he got shot from the front, but he somehow got shot in both lungs. He only got shot once from the front. How do you get shot in both lungs from the front?
Mm.
um, another glaring plot hole. And but yeah, so his grand plan is to release this mind control gas into the air so that everybody in the city is under his control. Um, and the other aspect of it too is so every vigilante superhero usually has like the tech person, the tech guy.
Right.
So for Black Scorpion, she's got this guy Argyle, who's played by Garrett Morris, who, if anybody out there watched old school SNL, he was a cast member on SNL. He was the one who did the bit with for the deaf and hearing impaired. Good night and have a pleasant
Oh,
tomorrow. Yeah. And he so Argyle has this like chop shop, and he modifies her car into the Scorpion mobile, and somehow this guy who runs a very low level chop shop in LA can get his hands on military grade technology that can
yeah.
change her car from a sports car to a black, you know,
Look,
you know.
uh, it fell off a truck.
Yes, yeah, yeah. but but yeah, I mean, it's, it is what it is. I mean, I will say it. I was entertained by it at the very least, even though, like, there's just so many like leaps in logic and plot contrivances and everything. But I mean, it's a fairly straightforward superhero uh, origin story movie. And I mean, it's got a beautiful woman, wearing a really hot outfit. I mean,
Right. I mean, Roger Corman was not out to was not out to make high art of any sort.
no, he was out to make movies that people wanted to watch. And he liked a lot of action. He liked a lot of cool set pieces, and he liked beautiful women. So
Yep. Uh,
yeah.
I believe this is the guy who one time they decided to shoot a movie in a single weekend just to see if they could.
Yeah, that was the original Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
The man was the king of B movies. Like he has the claim to fame that no movie that he ever made ever lost a dime.
Right. Yeah.
I suppose, except arguably the Fantastic Four movie that they never actually released.
Right. Yeah. But yeah. I mean, uh, this is I mean, fairly decent movie. I mean, for what it is. And yeah, this is definitely one of those, like, watch it with some friends, watch it with plenty of alcohol. Hopefully you can find it. The only reason I was able to watch it is because I had a copy of it on DVD. You
Hmm.
might be able to find that one. It's not on Blu-ray. It never got a Blu-ray release,
I can't
and
imagine why.
yeah, oh, yeah, and it's not streaming anywhere. So your best bet is maybe try to find you know a copy of it on DVD somewhere. But yeah,
Well, it sounds like you had a better time with this one than I had with mine.
yeah.
Uh, and you also had another good recommendation this week,
Hmm.
the Paul Newman classic Slapshot, which I had somehow never actually heard of before.
uh, it is kind of somewhat obscure. I think the only reason I know about it is because when I, in my teens and maybe early 20s, I was a pretty big hockey fan, and this is like this movie is to hockey what Caddyshack is for golf.
That is a good way of describing it because
Yeah.
so interesting things about the making of this movie. Um, so the original screenplay was written by Nancy Dowd, sister of the Johnstown Jets player or excuse me, Johnstown Jets blech, teammate Ned Dowd, who also appeared in the movie as the character Ogie Oglethorpe.
Oh, okay.
And the three characters who are known as the Hanson brothers were actually also players on that same team.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I remember that they were actual hockey players. Yeah.
Okay, Jack Carlson. Okay, one of the three brothers, Jack Carlson, was unavailable at the time of filming, so he was played by a different Johnstown Jets player.
Okay.
And David Hanson was himself the inspiration for another character in the movie, Dave Killer Carlson. So this movie has apparently has more to do with reality than I was expecting before I did my cursory Wikipedia uh, look here.
Yeah.
So, which makes it seem very. I definitely was struck by the authenticity of it, as
Yeah.
it's. Imagine my surprise that this movie came out the same year as Star Wars and is as filthy as it is.
Yeah.
Also, okay, so maybe this is just me not being as cultured as I could be. Like,
Yeah.
we've seen another Paul Newman movie. In fact, it even had the same director as I recall.
Yeah.
Uh,
The Sting.
The
Yeah.
Sting. Like Paul Newman's character in that one was a shyster, but he seemed like more of like a gentleman thief almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, he's just
No, yeah,
he's none of that. Yeah.
I think of him as the nice guy on the salad dressing where they give the profits away to charity.
Yeah.
not this, not this. Well, we'll get into what he is in a minute.
Yeah.
So the story takes place in a fictional town in Pennsylvania that it's the 1970s. Rust Belt is rusting. 1977, in
Yeah.
stagflation, oil embargo, times are not good.
Yeah. And yeah, the town mill, which employs most of the people living there, is closing down, and the which means they don't have any money to go to hockey games, and so the Charlestown Chiefs are about ready to fold.
No, not if Paul Newman's character has anything to say about that.
Yeah, yeah. So Newman's character, I'm trying to remember,
Reggie.
Reggie. Yeah, he he basically
He
concocts
he
this
is an,
whole.
he is an aging player slash coach.
Yes, and his team basically has a team full of misfits for the most part.
Right. You
Ex-
got the way the movie opens was actually very indicative of the rest of it because they actually do a couple of it's kind of neat. They do a little bit of introduction for people who don't know hockey very well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
it's French Canadian guy who's just a amusing side character in a TV interview with a local guy. Uh, uh, Oh, so do you love hockey? Oh yeah, I love the sport. I'm just making up a line here, but
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
you have to follow the rules. You know, if you have your stick up like this, like he keeps like almost whacking the guy with his stick as he's showing slashing and spearing
yeah,
and chopping and the other things you're not supposed to do.
yeah. And he said, "And yeah, you go to the box for 2 minutes, and you will feel shame, and then you get freed."
I would say this movie is so. I shouldn't say famously. I ended up watching Blues Brothers and Animal House as part of this review series, and I liked Blues Brothers pretty well. I didn't really care for Animal House, and I think this movie is cut from very similar cloth, where it's kind of the semi-directionless '70s um, out there comedy.
Yeah, yeah. Very, obviously, like, it was very raunchy, and yeah, just it kind of like it does have an overall plot, but it kind of feels like like a Saturday Night Live thing where it's like it's just one like humorous thing, one skit after another, basically.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, like the overlying plot is it's the season, and you're kind of seeing what Paul Newman's character, like, okay, is he going to get his comeuppance? What's going to happen to the team? So
yeah,
that gives like enough meat to keep the comedic bits going together.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, the basic thing is that he works with this a reporter, this sports writer with the local newspaper to kind of tell him, hey, there's a buyer down in Florida. They're going to buy the team, and they're going to move to
Right.
Florida.
Right. He's trying. So yeah, he basically is doing his best to try and save the team if he can.
Yeah, and the other character in the movie is I guess like the president or the general manager, McGrath, who is played by great character actor Strother Martin. He was he was actually the warden in Cool Hand Luke.
Oh,
Um, yeah, he's the guy who says, "What we got here is failure to communicate." Um, but he so part of the movie is that he arranges the trade that brings the Hanson brothers to the team, and they're just the goofiest guys that you'll ever
yeah.
meet in your life.
Like they show up with their slot cars and they're playing that and getting tilted when they're oh, this isn't going right. This thing's busted, and he throws it down.
Yeah,
It's very it comes off as very immature.
yeah, and yeah, and Newman's just like, oh God, they're he. I won't say the
What'd you
word.
trade for him? What'd you trade him for? A bag of a used puck bag?
Yeah, yeah. So and then of course the other character in the movie, who's kind of like he's like the star player on the team, Ned Braden. Um, and he's kind of he's the hot shot goal scorer, and
Also,
who's
kind of the only morally upstanding character in the movie, more or less.
more or less well, except for how he treats his wife, which
Or kind of neglects her, but you know,
yeah,
by the standards of everybody else around him.
yeah. um, but Newman's character gets the idea that how they're going to start winning games is to just be the biggest bullies in the entire league.
Yeah,
It's
you see kids in hockey. Gooning has an entirely different meaning than what you see on
yeah,
the internet these days.
yes, yeah,
It just means to be excessively violent, um, and just like So what if you put me in the penalty box? What if you knocked me out? That half that guy's teeth are on the ice, so we're good here.
yeah, yeah. So they start all these different fights with all these teams, and that's when then Newman starts playing the Hanson brothers, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, so he starts playing these dorks who, man, they seemed like such nice boys, but they just immediately turned to violence at the slightest provocation.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I still love the scene when they're before one game they're just out there doing their warm ups and they skate by them, and then the second time they skate around, he just pow
Yeah.
just lays this guy out.
Um, but I would say that this is a fine performance from Paul Newman because he is objectively one of the worst characters we have watched in a review in ages. And this is even comparing him to Glenn Powell's character from Hitman, who smothered a man to death with a plastic bag in
Yeah,
cold blood.
yeah,
And yet Paul Newman's character comes off as worse. He's violent, he's stupid, he hates gay people. Like he he chases other men's wives exclusively.
yeah. He sleeps with other men's wives and while he's trying to get back together with his ex-wife.
Yes. Like the man just is the most classless human being I think I've ever seen in fiction, and yet you almost find yourself rooting for him just because he has this weird charisma about him.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know what Paul Newman did to be somewhat likable, but he manages it.
Yeah, yeah, he had a yeah, he pulled it off very well. And yeah, uh, I think what I love about this movie is it's so quotable too. It's like like much like with Caddyshack and professional golfers. Like professional golfers, they can quote that Caddyshack all the live long day, and professional hockey players and hockey fans, they can do the same thing with this movie. It's just like Dave's the killer. Dave's a mess.
One thing I noticed is that this movie might have been benefiting from being on Netflix. On IMDb's popularity rating, it's number
Mm.
3,323 at the moment, up 96 slots from whatever time period.
Oh
Which,
wow.
considering how many movies have been made over time, that this relatively obscure hockey movie from 1977 is up there is kind of impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how well this movie did when it came out.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
Slapshot. Wikipedia. I usually look at the numbers for this, but I've found that with movies this old, the numbers can be suspicious.
Yeah.
Okay, budget is 6 million, box office of 28 million. So it made its budget back, and then probably spent the next 50 years printing little bits of money from. Well, I guess you couldn't show it on TV too often without being heavily edited, but
Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah. I mean, I'm sure they made quite a bit of money off of like video, sales and yeah, like or having it on, you don't have to censor it on HBO or anything, any of
yeah,
those channels. But yeah,
that's true.
um,
In 1998, Maxim named Slapshot the best guy movie of all time. Hmm. I could see that.
yeah, yeah, I could see that too. Yeah.
The film is standard viewing for young ice hockey players on road trips.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, including Christian Hansen, son of David Hansen, one of the three Hansen brothers, who saw the film for the first time when he was 11 years old during a hockey road trip with his team. Oh my God.
I wonder how they all felt when they saw the mom from Christmas Story's boobs.
Oh, was that her? Oh, no. Also, apparently, after the Humboldt Broncos bus crash in 2018, a broken Slapshot DVD was found at the crash site.
Oh yeah.
Oh no. The film was followed by two direct-to-video sequels, Slapshot 2, Breaking the Ice in 2002, and Slapshot 3, The Junior League, 2008.
Ooh.
Paul Newman and the rest of the original cast did not participate in either sequel, with the exception of the Hanson brothers, who had major roles in both.
Uh, yeah.
I have a feeling those are probably about as good as Caddyshack 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I find that we're mostly talking around the movie rather than about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that's because like for this sort of comedy, there isn't really like too much of a story to break down, and we don't want to spoil all of the great moments.
Yeah. Yeah. In particular, the scene in the locker room during the last game. That's probably my favorite scene in the movie.
Oh yeah, like where he decides, you know what? I'm tired of being a goon. We're gonna play this game nice. You're getting killed out
Yeah.
there. But yeah, another Paul Newman classic. It is recommended for those who don't mind offensive comedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the one limiting factor of it. And like I said, you will, if you're like me, you will be astounded. Like if you filmed this movie exactly the same way today, first off, you get canceled.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But second off, you would be pushing the envelope just as much today as you were in 1977.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Pretty pretty amazing how cyclical it ends up being.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah.
Yeah.
So probably our only really strong recommendation of the night.
Yes. Yeah.
So good thing to good thing to end off on.
Indeed. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. We appreciate it as always.
Remember to like, subscribe, all the YouTube friendly things.
Yes, and another friendly reminder that if we get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, we will watch all 8 episodes of The Acolyte.
Assuming it hasn't been Batgirl off of the servers.
Indeed, yes. Well, yeah. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next week,
Night,
everybody.
everybody.